This is Germany, the land of fine beer, bread, and home to Europe's largest economy. Globally acknowledged for excelling in a variety of high-end manufactured goods, Germany has quite the international reputation. Just slap a Made in Germany sticker on a Nokia and it somehow becomes more reliable. But the German economy wasn't always the dominating and influential force it is today. And this raises the following questions. How did a country that was once split in two just a little over 30 years ago become one of the world's richest nations? How and what makes Germany's economy so large? And of course, what might the future hold for Deutschland? In order to find out the answers to those questions, as always, we must start with the history. Welcome to the economy of Germany. Today's Federal Republic of Germany is actually quite a young country, unified only in 1871. At the time, its economy was experiencing the wave of the Second Industrial Revolution, which had taken a little longer to get going than in its European neighbours. Once unified, Germany's economic development intensified. This was down to a series of factors, two of which were the unification of free trade areas across the many German states, as well as the adoption of a unified monetary system. One rather interesting factor, which was key to the development of Germany's skilled workforce, were the policies adopted by this man, Otto von Bismarck. Bismarck was a key figure in Germany. He brought in a round of policies aimed at establishing the first modern welfare state, such as universal healthcare and compulsory education. These policies created skilled human capital that allowed Germany to excel economically. This economic growth was so intense that Germany emerged as the largest producer of steel by 1900, overtaking the UK and the USA. A feat also achieved thanks to the impressive German banking system, which formed cartels for various industries, giving an advantage to the capital-intensive industries in Germany, like the aforementioned steel industry. By 1913, Germany was dominating various European markets and now represented 26.6% of world trade, just behind the British. Skipping through the next couple of decades, as you all know, Germany's ambition got the better of them. And after World War I, the Treaty of Versailles, hyperinflation, the Great Depression, and yet another World War, Germany's economy was in a terrible state. In the post-war period, with the help of the Marshall Plan and the establishment of a social market economy, Germany got back on its feet and running again. Well, at least the West did. From the 1950s through to the 1960s, West Germany experienced its economic miracle, with its industrial production in 1960 being 2.5 times larger than in 1950. Many decades later, when the Berlin Wall came tumbling down, Germany's economy was presented with a series of positive and negative impacts as the following governments began the process of reunifying the country, a job made much harder by the fact the communist East was significantly poorer than the West. Since the reunification of the country, though, the German economy has continued to excel in exporting goods in many sectors beyond just cars, automobiles, and four-wheeled machines. And if you'd like to learn more about that industry, check out this video I've already made about it. Germany, in the last 2 decades in particular, has positioned itself as the powerhouse of the European economy, and being part of the Eurozone has strengthened its importance and sway, not just within Europe and the EU, but also the world. So, what's Germany's economy like today? Is it really the reliable, consistent, productive nation we think about when we think of its goods and services that reach our own respective countries? Today, Germany is home to the world's 4th largest economy and Europe's biggest. In fact, in nominal terms, even if you doubled Russia's economy, Germany's would still be larger. With exports totaling north of $1.8 trillion, Germany is an export power and actually holds the record for the largest trade surplus in the world, set back in 2016. This reliance on exports has its pros and cons, with Germany more likely to be resilient to any localized economic shocks, since if the global economy keeps on humming, it keeps on exporting. And with 47% of its GDP being made up of exports, more than 4 times the ratio seen in the US, This also means that when the global economy sneezes, Germany is more likely to catch a cold. In relation to other countries, the average German is pretty wealthy, with a GDP per capita of $46,500, slightly higher than Canada, the UK, and France, but below fellow German-speaking Austria. On a more domestic front, Germany's economic might is not split equally, even today, more than 30 years since Germans tore down that wall. When taking into account the population of German states, Berlin is the only German state to have a per capita gross regional product greater than states located in the former West Germany. And once again, with the exception of Berlin, the cities that excel in certain sectors of the German economy are located in the West. Think finance in Frankfurt, where the ECB is based, or Siemens, Allianz and BMW in Munich, or even Hamburg, which is not just home to Europe's third busiest container port, but also is the German state with the highest gross regional product per capita. So, it's fair to say that despite 30 years of fixing a once divided country, there is a lot more work to be done before Germany is economically on the same page. But what makes Germany the manufacturing power it is today? Is the stereotype of the productive, hard-working German employee really a load of scheiße? So we've seen that Germany exports an exceptionally high amount of goods and services for a nation of 83 million people. And with all sorts of companies like Lufthansa, Volkswagen, E.ON and all of these specializing in every industry under the sun, perhaps German rates of productivity are no different to Mexican or Japanese rates of productivity. Well, to have a deeper look, we must first define what we mean by labour productivity, because what it is not is working an insane amount of hours while you actually doom scroll on social media. Labour productivity refers to the output value over labour input, or to use a common metric, GDP per hour worked. Using this metric, we can see that Germany is definitely very productive, ranking very highly. GDP metrics aside, there are other indicators that prove that the German workforce is extremely active and highly skilled. Take the nation's employment figure of 77% before COVID hit, which ranks it the highest amongst the G7 nations. Or Germany's R&D expenditure levels, which point towards an economy on the cutting edge of new technologies and innovations, which in turn help keep the economy growing as well as employee productivity. However, perhaps the most interesting figure surrounding German productivity is the amount of hours worked by the average worker. According to the OECD, the average German worker worked a total of 1,386 hours in 2019, with their US counterparts working nearly 400 hours more every year. That's more than 16.5 days of continuous work. With such high levels of economic prosperity and relatively low levels of hours worked, there's a lot that Germany seems to be getting right. However, there's an interesting element to take from these data. That is, with a large proportion of the active workforce working in Germany when compared to the US, for example, it could be that more of the elderly population in Germany work part-time jobs after they have hit retirement age, therefore reducing the average number of hours worked per worker. So what does all this working mean for the future of the German economy? Will Germany remain an important export power for the global economy? In the coming decades, Germany is expected to face quite a few critical moments that could prove to be very damaging to its economic prosperity. The first of which is a problem currently underway. That is, the growing pressures caused by an aging population. Germany, you see, is not a young country. It's old even by European standards. The median age in Germany is just over 47 years old, making Japan and Monaco the only countries that are older. These shifting demographics will mean that fewer Germans will be of working age, and more services will be demanded of its existing healthcare providers, which will be costly for the German state to pay for. In addition to this, in the coming decades, we are likely to see China move into producing some of the high-tech goods that German companies currently excel at making. This is already underway in the automotive industry with homegrown Chinese companies like beide and NEO. This change does not mean that German companies are doomed. Rather, it means that there is more competition and companies will need to adapt in order to remain relevant. Despite these two challenges though, going forward, Germany is still expected to be a major economy in Europe for many more decades, and it is likely to build upon its levels of economic prosperity given the stability, confidence and governance of the nation. Germany's economy is an impressive, mature and innovative part of the global economy. The Germans' attempt in recent decades to bring the East up to the West level of economic prosperity has been impressive and deserves an applause. It's also worth mentioning that there's no country that has a complete balance of economic prosperity within its borders, and therefore the divide between East and West perhaps should be looked through a different lens. All in all, I'd expect the German economy to remain relevant in the coming decades, as its commitment to R&D expenditure remains high, and its economic weight in the EU allows it to further some of its economic interests alongside other EU members, which in turn allows it to uphold its reputation as a solid and sound economy. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video about the impressive German economy. As always, I could only select so many topics for this video, and I would love to hear what topics you would have added in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video with all of your German friends. Otherwise, take care. Bye.